Life's never dully with Sully. This episode we cover Timothée Chalamet's Bones and All on the first, the last, the Nerdom. With Tom and Mike.
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
I'm good. It's great to be back.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah. So, well, we had a little bit of a mid fall break, I guess you call it, mid fall winter, early winter break, just because
Mhm.
it's the holidays. We just if you're not familiar, if you're not from the U.S., we live in the United States, and we just got done with a big holiday that is I'm sure other countries celebrate too, but. Oh, you know what? That would help if I could actually bring my mic down. I forgot to do that.
Yes.
Can you tell we haven't done this in a minute?
Mhm. Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes I'll forget and leave my mic on the floor, so no
yeah,
worries.
yeah. Yeah.
It's
Well,
it can
also
happen.
also new setup, but yeah, the Thanksgiving anyway. So how was your Thanksgiving?
It's good. It's good. Yeah. No politics were mentioned, so I don't think. Yeah, maybe it once or twice, but yeah, you gotta. Yeah. So it was
Yeah,
a,
that's
it was relatively peaceful. But yeah, except we had some dogs that didn't get along, so that was a little bit fun. But yeah, and little did I know, our movie I picked kind of fitting for Thanksgiving. There's a lot of eating involved. But but before
we.
we get into it, bones
Yes,
and all,
sir.
how was your Thanksgiving?
No, it was good. It was good. It wasn't quite what I wanted, what I had initially planned a couple years ago, but life is what it is. With the house and getting everything in there, it kind of takes more of a priority to put those things in line ahead of time than like traveling or vacation time. So I'm really happy. But yeah, I had me and the kiddos, and we had some family that rolled through. It was good. It was nice and quiet. It was good. We actually watched. I like did a search for like a thing. I didn't want to kind of play the usual movies, so I kind of like I had a small list of like Thanksgiving movies that they're not really Thanksgiving movies, but they just have kind of
Right.
they play into the storyline. And Mars Attacks. I watched that classic
Hmm.
with all Michael J. Fox and so
Yeah.
many great. Oh, it's just a great classic, awesome. But aside from that, no, we also this is kind of a little bit of a Thanksgiving too that we're gonna get into here for our show because I'll let you take it away. But this is the second November
Hmm.
that we have been together doing this thing. And if you could kind of take us back and pay a little walk down
Homage.
memory lane. Yeah, because this is our,
Yeah.
our I'll let you do the honors here.
Yeah, it's our second anniversary. We started the whole thing off with Dune. Dune. I have my boomer juice here. Like a
Yeah,
monster. Um,
toasted to long
yep.
time, long time.
Yeah.
Until as long as we
So
want it to
yeah,
be.
yeah. Exactly. We wanted to talk about Dune, and we thought, hey,
Hmm.
let's get this podcast together and talk about it. And
Yep.
so last year we looked at the we looked at the 1984 Dune, and then this year we were hoping to have Dune 2 to talk about, but unfortunately, life gets in the way and it gets postponed. So we thought, what better than to grab a Timothée Chalamet movie, Bones and All, and
Yep.
talk about that. So yeah, if you're new to the channel, if you came here for Bones and All, we are going to get to it. We're going to do a bit of a discussion. We like to we'll give you our opinion on it, but we like to kind of dig in deep and talk about various things. And there's a lot of stuff that we could get into with this movie. There's a lot going on here.
There is a lot, and
Mhm.
I kind of was telling you I got a new setup going because I badly needed the space. But anyway, yeah, I wrote all my notes out on my handy dandy note board here, and but in any case, yeah. So yeah, hey Tom, I just want to say thank you for being with me for this like last 2 years. We
Mhm.
truly had no plan or really ulterior motive or anything related
Mhm.
aside from like I've always wanted to do some kind of podcasting. I've tried different various things before, but it's never kind of I can't do the rage jock or shock jock thing. That's just like it's kind of like it gets old after a while. and it's just not fun. But this is like
Right.
something, and I know you had kind of you had entertained the thought too, and we just had right place, right time for us to come
Yep.
together and do this wonderful get together. At some point, I'm going to go back and re-edit our show at some point, or
Yeah.
we might even do rehashes, like to just kind of redo it at some point. That's always a possibility if we run if we so choose. But yeah, no. So Tom and I we've been doing this, and we're about at the 5.5 minute mark. So yeah. Well, I guess we can get into it. But yeah, this one was to be. Well, real quick before we jump into the main thing, this is also an excuse not only to talk about Dune, but also to mention that they actually moved the timeline up to March 1st from March 15th, and I think we're under 100 days. I don't know. I saw that like within the last couple weeks on some numerous Facebook group or social thing that I like to follow, some Dune news that came across my feed. But that's all this is great. I can't wait to see Dune. I know my kiddos actually can't wait to see it too, which is unusual. Like, and makes me so happy as a science fiction dad to see them get into that. And that's a little peek at the curtains here. That's our thing. Yeah. So anyway, I did want to say before we jump too far into it, I wanted to say congratulations to Tom. While we did the solo break, we kind of talked about, hey, if you want to do something on your own solo, go ahead, just jump on there and whatever. And you had been you've been following this for quite some time and had mentioned it, but you put out you're halfway through the Book of the Fallen, and lo and behold, 239 views. That is amazing. And I did I took the liberty of setting this up, but the most popular. You shot up to the second most watched thing, and I just wanted to call that out. So Tom is the come on back if you want to hear more thoughts on that. I think that warrants more videos on that. I have no doubt that you would be happy to in the future. But
I got my book 7 handy right now. As you can see, it's a bit of a brick. So it takes me. I'm almost halfway through, so yeah, in a couple more weeks, I'll probably have it under my belt and maybe do a little overview of it. But yeah, shout out to the Malazan Reddit group. I think a lot of the viewers came over from them, and I think we picked up a subscriber. So shout out to you guys if you're continuing to watch us. But yeah, and also I use our thumbnail for that's complete AI. Our little animated characters of ourselves, and then that image I couldn't find a good image to throw up as our thumbnail. I didn't want to steal anyone else's art, so I had AI generate me kind of one of the characters from the book and kind of a background. So I thought it turned out well. But
absolutely, yep. No, shout out to you for that too. You discovered that, and it employed new ways of doing things here as we move into we're always moving to the future. You and I are no stranger to technology and staying current on some things. Not everything in the world, but it kind of gets more narrowed and filtered as you get a little bit older, farther along in your career, because you just don't have time for that. But yeah, shout out to Tom and his show. Go check out his commentary on the Malazan books. And at some point, probably, and we kind of had this. We talked about this off and on offline. But about that there is a military kind of thing there going on that you had mentioned, and I really want to get into it. At least read the first one or whatever, get going on it, because but I'll have some downtime probably a little bit later toward the back half of December, because everything kind of shuts down and freezes, and it's kind of nice to kind of just have days where you're working, but it's not as hard. Not your workload is quite a bit. And it's more about planning ahead for the next year or the next quarter, whatever it is. Then kind of, or maybe I do need to brush up on some study things too. But all that homework aside, and enough chit chat. And again, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you've ever watched any of our stuff, if you're seeing this out way past this timeline and this date, we invite you to go look at our back catalog and follow also some of the things. Based on that, I think that would be cool to maybe get into some more things. Of course, we're
Yeah,
anything that's nerdom or horror or anything broadly speaking that
mhm.
has a fan appeal.
Yep, yeah, yeah, like this other podcaster I listen to often says, if you're watching this 100 years in the future after the robots have taken over, yeah, and looking for some entertainment, yeah, just thanks for watching.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, Timothée Chalamet. So yeah, we wanted to do something, and I heard about this horror movie. It was on Amazon. I thought, all right, yeah, it'll be something we can watch because I've been
Right.
kind of meaning to watch it. So it was a brand new watch for both me and Mike, I believe,
Yes.
and it's called Bones and All. If if you it's one of those movies that probably works best if you are completely blind going in. So if you kind of want to watch it, maybe go ahead and dive into it.
I agree with
But the
that.
base
Yeah.
yeah, but the basic story is there are these things called eaters. They're much like us humans, but they like vampires. Instead of wanting blood, they want human meat,
Right.
fresh meat, freshly killed meat.
Right.
So basically cannibals, but they are, from the way the movie portrays it, they're these creatures. And it begins with this girl discovering who she is, and then falling in love along the way. So that's sort of the basic story structure of it. But yeah, I have mixed feelings about this movie. Um, I'm a bit mixed on this movie, and we'll get into it more. Oop, I think.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Uh-oh.
Oop. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep, no, you're
All
fine.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just I don't who knows, internet dip out.
It's those eaters. They're coming for me.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because like I feel like one of the things I wrote down was like it kind of gets there, but
It,
it doesn't quite land in a way. Like
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
good, but like is it up there like with some other ones that we've seen, some really strong graphic or otherwise or content or whatever you want.
Yeah.
There's some kind of extremeness to some of the horror flicks that
Mhm.
we've already taken down, and this one. I get it, but I think that it kind of flirts with being done and complete, but it doesn't quite
It
stick the landing for me in
yeah,
some ways. Other areas
it
it completely absolutely dominates in, which we'll get into some of the more
yeah,
positive aspects. But go ahead.
yeah, and it's based off a book. So if and I don't think either of us read the book, but
Nope.
if any of you have read it and want to kind of enlighten us how it compares, that'd be great. But I
Right.
think the basic structure of a movie or a book usually are in three acts. So you have Act One, Act Two, and Act Three. I think the first two acts of the movie are awesome. The last third of the movie, the last act, just totally falls apart. And I didn't. I it the first part of it was so great that
Yeah.
the fact that it stumbled and fell, and I'm kind of curious if the book, uh, if it's structured and plays out the same way, because
I
I mean the beginning of the movie is a banger. I mean, you start
It starts off
introducing to
very
yeah.
very strong. It has
Hmm.
I think what saves this movie is the fact that it has like, or it saves it in some aspects. Another aspect, you can't. There's no saving to be done. But the foundations of this are really, really, really good. Like where the way that you're just kind of dropped into this through, kind of the POV of the main character Mirren, and you kind of you kind of grow up with her. Kind of you're kind of like
Hmm.
it's kind of like the most cruel world that you could ever think of, like start wise, but yeah,
Hmm.
I those foundations are really good. One thing I wanted to get into or just comment to, and we'll go into this. This movie has layers upon layers upon layers of eftness. I'll kind of save the hard hitters for a little bit later. But the world building, I don't think that I've seen a movie this strong in world building in some time. It doesn't quite stick the landing for some of this stuff, but the world building, and one of the kind of the lines that I like to get into about judging a movie, kind of, or gauging it, rather, maybe is a better wording, is that it's the world building, and it inspires you to kind of think about what ifs. Like, okay, so we're introduced in this concept, like you just kind of touched upon, like eaters. That's one that we'll get into. But that's what I wanted to comment on as far as like one of the really strong positives. What did you think about the world building, and did you have similar thoughts, or were you or were you fascinated by other aspects that kind of let your imagination kind of run wild?
Well, yeah, anything like with vampires and zombies, you have to build up your rules to these creatures and these eaters. They definitely go into the rules, and and you're, like you said, you're introduced by Mirren. She's the person that has no idea what's going on. She just knows she has this compulsion to bite and eat people. But she doesn't know why that is, and her father has no idea how to really deal with the situation. He just tried to protect her, and right at the beginning of the movie, he as soon as she turns 18, he lets her go and say, "Hey, you're on your own at this point. I did my duty. So long, goodbye." He gave her birth certificate, and so the main most of the movie
in the 80s too, is her, which we didn't say yet. Yeah.
Yep, set in the 80s. And so she's the big quest in the movie is she's looking for her mother. Maybe looking for some answers. When you are looking at, if you're, I'm not adopted, but I assume when you are, you're kind of looking for answers. Maybe rightfully or wrongly, you think, well, maybe if I meet my real parents, I'll understand myself a little bit better.
Right.
And so that's kind of her journey. And I like how it's steeped in reality. These creatures are in the real world. There's not that mystique and glamour of, say, like a Twilight movie where they, everything is a kind of larger than life. This is very real and gritty. And it kind of harkens back to the movie Let the Right One In, which I hopefully will cover at one point. That's one of the faults of this movie, is that it harkens back to much greater and better movies, and it sets itself up for a big payoff that doesn't happen. But yeah, go ahead.
That's a great way to. Yeah, I had a lot of things, like one of the things that world building kind of like that I like to that is usually it's a pillar stone or cornerstone of a good strong movie. That will last the test of time. I have no doubt that this will absolutely kind of get there or stick around, but I don't see it getting like all that crazy big like Twilight did. Obviously, Twilight is a completely different thing. It's more like it's like my Heinlein novels. Okay, like a lot of the Heinlein novels or they used to be called juvenile novels, or nowadays they're called YA. Some of this kind of you kind of get a little bit of a very serious young adult novel kind of thing, but I think it did tiptoe more into the adult side more better than others. I don't know anything about the book other than what you were saying. Like, I think it was published in 2014, but I wanted to say, with that being in the 80s, it sets up so many different layers that you have to acknowledge them, like whether you're, and they're kind of they even touch on them in a very tasteful way, but like you have like, okay, so there's this world of cannibals that's among us. That's kind of like that's a very interesting concept that sets up all kinds of like wonderful what if kind of scenarios that we'll never know about. That was why I love it. Which like maybe that could explain, maybe in their world, in their universe, eaters are a thing. And then there's chosen eaters. That's another thing, or you're born that way. It's kind of like the movie kind of takes a little bit of a turn, which we'll get into. Like it's very interesting in this eater culture this outcast kind of world. Like, but maybe that would explain like why some certain ancient cultures across time had some kind of a human sacrifice kind of component, and like, well, they sacrificed some of what happened to the body after that.
Yeah.
Kind of like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
it just kind of got my gears turning. But like, we'll dive into that. I mean, or I guess what was strong with you as far as like her journey as she learns who she is.
Yeah, as a young Bilbo Baggins would, but no, I like that.
Loosely, yeah. I mean, wandering nomad.
I don't think anyone's ever compared Twilight to a Robert Heinlein. So, and kudos to you. And that's the stuff you'll get here at the first, the last, the Nerdom. You'll get the tying the knots between. Yeah, I know the young adults side of things. But no. The cool thing is, like you said, it's set in the 80s, and it doesn't go for the nostalgia bite of, say, Stranger Things with the neon and the references and everything. Although it does have references. I sent you a link. You might want to pull it up. The Lord of the Rings covers. One of the things that you could kind of gather that it's in the 80s, but you could actually place probably the exact time frame of it. If you scroll down a little bit further, it's not that one. It's
I thought for sure it was. I thought it was like blue.
A little bit. Yeah, it is blue. It's that one.
Fellowship.
So
all right.
Yep. Because
look at that.
Because those.
Oh my God.
When I read the Lord of the Rings in high school, those were the versions that I read. So you may be able to do the math to figure me out. But yeah. But yeah, and then I did actually find that the 73 version.
Right.
I found some copies of those in an old in a used bookstore, and they were kind of falling apart. And then I to actually read it, I got the newer versions at the time, which was that. But yeah, so she's reading the Fellowship of the Rings at certain points during the book or the movie. And it kind of the books, she's obviously a reader as well as an eater, but so she's reading books, and much like we do, I think, is we get books that we're emotionally attached to and maybe reflect what we're going through at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
And she's on a. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but when I reread a very dear book to my heart, it's crazy because it will remind me of different times in my life when I read that book, depending upon whatever the heck is going on. I don't know about you, but like, yeah, it absolutely is a touchstone like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Fellowship of the Rings, obviously, they're on a journey, a quest in that book. So yeah, it kind of reflects hers. And then I didn't notice this book, but and when I was going through the trivia on IMDb, they pointed out at one point she's reading later in the movie, she's reading Cabal by Clive Barker, which is later made into the movie Nightbreed, which maybe we'll talk about in the future. But it's
for sure we will.
But that movie,
yep.
That movie is about what society thinks are monsters, creatures. But he's always in Clive Barker's writing. He's always trying to twist things and look at who are truly the monsters. Are they actually the monsters we see, or are they us? So. But yeah, so that kind of plays in with the movie as well. But yeah, it's kind of there's those fun little Easter eggs throughout the movie. Also,
there are so many. Yeah, no. I want to comment real quick. You going back in time and because you actually lived it, obviously, and you are a fellow nerd as well. Whoever the set person that was in charge of like making sure things were from the 80s and kind of being very consistent across that was very, very, very good, because you have echoes and reminders of that timeline. Maybe that book didn't land for you, and it's funny you say that too. I just want to say one of my favorite quotes was from, I believe, from Tolkien, which is "Not all who wander are lost." Something along those lines. I'm probably
Mm-hmm.
Not putting the full. I don't know what book it was from. I just know that was from. I just know that's from that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's so funny you say that too. Um, yeah, again, this goes back to that world building, and then you kind of get into the layers of like these people. There's even I don't know about you, but like but when I started watching it, like when I first went into it, I watched on Amazon, per se. And actually, I guess I could say this is shout out to Just Watch, which you can just kind of go in and figure out where you can find. Very rarely, it has to be very obscure for this to not tell you where it is. And honestly, if you probably already know it, but this it talks about like I'm not going to click on it here for my Amazon account, but it had the little synopsis that did not match what the hell the movie was about. At least on Amazon, because it talks about it makes it I don't like the way that it sold the movie, because the movie's not how it
Mm-hmm.
the thing that they focus on is like something about Reagan is president, and there's these two outcasts that are kind of down and out, and they're kind of figuring out what it's like to be marginalized on the edges of society, and like, yeah, it was kind of like that, but like I just like the Bush or the Reagan Bush thing it just didn't land.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't make any goddamn sense to highlight that, because that had really nothing to do with anything in the movie at all. Like, I mean, it goes into it for like these different cultures, I guess, that are at play here. These outcast kind of cultures and ethics that we'll for sure get into. But like one that is kind of came up. Well, let's put it this way. Like, so it started to kind of fall off for you at the very end. I would agree with that. I kind of was disappointed. I probably was disappointed a little bit, maybe a little bit more than that. And I will say it is kind of it's a little bit pokey in the build up. But in the beginning, you go with it because you don't know anything. But I think the more you know, the pokiness about it kind of gets a little, I wouldn't say grating, but it does kind of get in the way a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the thing I really loved about this movie and love about the first 2/3 of the movie is that it doesn't reach in that portion of it. It doesn't reach for the low hanging fruit, so to speak. The things that would normally in a movie like this they would lean into. Whereas that towards the end of the movie it becomes this kind of cliched sort of a mishmash that doesn't really know what it wants to be at that point. But and that's why I judge the ending so harshly, because the first part of it is so expertly crafted. Like at the beginning, obviously the main protagonist is mixed race, and she's
I did not write that down, but that goes into what we're about to get into. Yeah.
Right. And then she meets up with her friends at the beginning of the movie, and obviously she wears a little bit poorer class clothes, and her friends look to be more middle class or higher society. And you were expecting some type of Carrie situation in that maybe the girls were going to make fun of her, or there was going to be some type of, lash out. And that doesn't go that way. It goes a completely different direction. And I love that. It's like, okay, all right, you're giving me something completely different. And then later on, when the relationship between Timothée and her blossom, you never get that sense of, there's no scorn from society. There's a scene where they meet up later with a couple of other eaters, but in the scene you see, here's a couple of rednecks. Okay, I see where this is going. They're going to hate on this mixed couple, and it doesn't go there. It opens it up in this whole different direction, and it's such a lovely thing to see. It's like, okay, I've seen that before. I've seen it done to death, and this right about now you get hit over the head with it so much in movies like this. And it's wonderful to see these two people just being people and in this world, and it's just so natural, and like you said, it's they did a wonderful job of capturing that time and space, and it feels real. It feels lived in. It feels like you're watching
It
real life.
it is a slice of life
Hmm.
for this. I mean that is essentially what it is. That it's
Hmm.
funny you say that too because the see I didn't so many times do movies attempt to redo the trope. And if they
Hmm.
do it, now there are some movies that get away with it, absolutely. But the
Hmm.
stereotypical kind of outcast, kind of bullied individual
Hmm.
kind of type, they flirted with that so hard in this movie, but they don't turn the corner. They don't focus on that.
Right.
It's not about that. That is
Yeah.
that could be an aspect, but the thing is, and I think they did that because they retain the aspect of hiding and secrets and who you really are or who we really are, whatever it is. I did notice, and we have yet to get into it, but I'm sure we will. This actually is probably going to go a little bit longer because we have a lot to say about it. Um, but it was kind of funny how her dad, and I don't know, I try to put myself in the dad's shoes, and I'm still kind of processing it, so I can't really give a solid answer. Like what would you do if your kid was like this? I mean, how long would you stick around for the ride? I mean, at some point you gotta, so I
Well,
don't think that dad did anything wrong per se because in his
yeah.
situation. I don't know that there would be a right thing to do anyway, to be honest. But aside from like, being very Abrahamic about it and like taking
Yeah.
your kid up to the top of a mountain and just throwing him off of it.
Yeah, there's actually Jack Ketchum wrote a short story about a plot line to the idea of, if you could have killed Hitler as a child or a
Right. Oh,
baby,
baby.
would you
Right.
have
I've heard
done it?
that. Yeah.
And then there's a short story by Jack Ketchum. I forget the name of it, but it's about this child that's about 12 or so, and he's exhibiting all the signs of a serial killer by
Right.
mutilating pets and stuff. And then in the
Dexter
story,
kind of covered that a little bit.
the mother is debating whether or not what to do with this child. And I won't spoil the short story,
Mm.
but yeah, he does some wonderful job with that. But just look at reality. There's parents that defend their serial killing kids. There's that bond. I don't have any kids myself, but I'm sure there's that bond that makes you kind of blind, like you said, to
I
certain aspects, or kind of overlook
I
or rationalize
I
things.
well, I agree with you. I think that's why it's almost kind of a little bit of more of a disappointment that you didn't get the payoff for what you were saying for judging it harshly. It expertly put, like kind of tour guides you through this world through Marin's eyes and through her experiences as she's asleep. All the best way to put it is that she's asleep, and as you go through the movie she becomes more awake. Now unfortunately, like when she becomes awake, it's just not quite as coherent as it starts out as. it kind of it kind of starts off really great, and then it just thins out way too much. Like and like you get these amazing bonds that are created between these strangers, like chosen family, as it were. These folks that are, I'm not going to call them wanderers because I think wandering would imply that they enjoy being on the road. And I don't know about you, but none of these characters look like they enjoy being on the road, like really, truly. You
Yeah.
have different artifacts of that, like where you have Sully, which we haven't really got into. Like that's the first it's kind of like a very good plot device, I guess, or plot rhetoric that you can use to kind of like explain like what's going on. And you kind of learn about this culture that is eaters or cannibals, and they have they have semi heightened senses of what we have, but they're more geared or born or driven like a vampire or a werewolf or something like that.
Hmm.
But they're born that way. But they
Yep.
can smell if they pay more attention, they can kind of essentially, I don't think that it's telepathic at all. I think what it is because he was talking about smelling. What it actually made me think of was pheromones, and how maybe these eaters are more tapped into that side of the brain or humanity, like where they can kind of, because that would explain a little bit. They're not superhuman. I love the way that it's just normal. It's just as normal as you can be, aside from like, oh, by the way, I don't know, if I arbitrarily like cut you off in traffic, you're going to follow me and eat me, versus like, I am a predator of some kind of humanity, of normal people, or I am not of normal people. And that's the other thing too. There is no real code or ethics that any of these people live by, which is kind of in and of itself kind of makes sense because it's chaotic. But I've kind of been talking for a minute,
and that's right.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, like you said, there's like there's codes and ethics that each individual has for themselves. Like Timothée Chalamet's character Lee, he has his own way of doing things and rationalizing it, and that gets a monkey wrench gets thrown into it a little bit further to the movie that causes a dissonance between him and Marin. But also the character Sully, he has a sort of his way of doing things and his own ethics, the rationalization in his mind to make it okay for what he is. And so the first act of the movie kind of reminded me of the movie Let the Right One In, and the second act very reminiscent of Near Dark, which is a vampire movie from the 80s that kind of gives a realistic look of what vampires would be like if they didn't have these $1 million mansions, if they were living on the road and wandering from town to town.
Right.
So yeah, I almost guarantee you that some of the makers of the movie had seen that. But the movie that really is dialed in and very much seems to be this movie's inspired by is the movie Badlands, with that's directed by Terrence Malick and stars Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek, which is about these star-crossed lovers, much like this, where Martin Sheen happens to be a killer, and it's sort of this doomed romance between the two of them, and that's very much what this one is. It's kind of
Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, exactly. This sort of slow pace with these wonderful vistas the wonderful vistas of these of the land as they travel these big wide wastelands that they find each other within.
Funny. Yeah, that plays prominently at the very end, and that's not giving a spoiler away, but if you recall, like, kind of the last, we are the first to last Nerdom, so like the kind of like one of the last things, kind of you and to piggyback on your point though too. They're on the road. They're not just in the road. They're in the wilderness. Like they're comfortable, equally probably going and finding an abandoned home or whatever property, or cattle, wherever they can find it, like where they can, like lay on hay in a manger somewhere, or in the bed of a pickup in the middle of a forest or whatever.
Exactly. Yep. And another great thing about this movie is the character actors. The guy who plays Sully is a wonderful character. They have some horror cameos in it. One of the eaters that they meet. Perfect. That's Sully was great. Also David Gordon Green, who's is a director. He plays an eater wannabe in this movie, and he's directed the latest Halloween movies and the newest Exorcist, which I have kind of mixed feelings about those. But if you really want to see a great movie by him, definitely check out Prince Avalanche. But yeah, also Jessica Harper is in it, who was the star of the original Suspiria movie. She plays
Mm.
Miran's grandmother, and Chloë Sevigny, who plays the Miran's mother. So really great, strong cameo roles that were really impactful. They're only in a scene or two,
Right.
but those you just those characters you want more of, and there's a kind of a mystery as far as they probably were just wanting to eat them, but those two eaters that they meet, the redneck eaters, the eater and eater wannabe. That was so creepy and so wonderfully done, that whole scene. I would love to have seen more of stuff like that
Yeah,
within the movie.
it kind of and this is just me reading into it from my own notes, but it seems like with the fact that you want to eat people, and it can be so arbitrary depending upon your code of ethics in other words, it's very arbitrary is what I'm saying. None of these people have like and I kind of like that they didn't do that. Like my frame of reference for this would be you mentioned Badlands and some other ones like that, like
Hmm.
and we both mentioned Twilight, and that's because it is a classic Romeo and Juliet type setup. It just kind of, now I would say this is,
Yeah.
for me, that aspect, the Romeo and Juliet aspect, was very very weak. But I don't think that they're quite lovers per se. I don't really buy that. I think that they're more platonic. They think they do love each other in a certain kind of way, but at least I don't know what the book said. No idea.
Hmm.
But for the movie, it was a very weak couple. Like, despite the fact of how you see that the graphic there at the very top of the page, like
Hmm.
where you had the like this, you it's very much leaning in, wanting you to think that they're a couple, and they are a
Hmm.
couple, but not quite. Like, I don't quite buy the love. I mean, I'm sure that there is a love thing, but maybe the book did a better job of expressing that, but I didn't get that, and there's reasons why, and you don't just do something, okay, just to get the end goal. And what I'm talking about is sexuality is a very big part of this movie. It is. I don't want to be stereotypical and say fluid. It's not like that. It's more of like just who these people are and what they do and what's didn't bat an eye at certain scenes. Like, I don't, that didn't kind of hope. Oh, my stupid thing. I need to be careful with my stupid thing. Anyway, what I'm getting to? Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. Born to, chosen to be, and that goes in with those rednecks. But anyway, my point being is, it seems like if you're an eater, you are chained to only one other person knowing who you are and what you do, and you may work as a team. But it just seems like if you get bigger, or if you get three people or four people, somebody's going to be the victim. And that's just kind of like the rules of maybe the rules that I'm reading into it, maybe too much, is the fact that you can only have two people be together that are, or that, and and even then, because of everything else in the world and their whole thing, it's not going to be for very long. Yeah, and you look at
Yeah.
Sully like wanted to, like, because at first there was kind of like Marin was kind of like checking in with him like in the middle of the movie. Spoiler, a little bit of a spoiler alert.
Hmm.
Just before I get into it, fair warning, but we are about 40
Yeah,
minutes into this.
I think we could probably get into spoilers, because
Well,
I really want to dig into the
well,
third act. Hmm.
absolutely. I want to dig into some other ones too, like where it's just like it's just culture versus society, honestly, and sometimes it's a subculture of that culture there. But like, you have this kind of thing like where Marin is checking in with Sully, like kind of like, okay, like he tracks her down, and I want to be very very clear. He followed her, and Lee. Okay, Lee is Timothée Chalamet's character. He followed
Hmm.
her. He did not find her. He followed her. He stalked her. He like prey, like predator. And then
Hmm.
that there's very much that ambiance that just is very weighted in that scene. and we won't be repeating certain kind of words that were said, but she kind of checks in with him and goes, "Hey, like, is this what this is? Like, father? Like you think you're my father figure to me?" And no, that is not the response that Sully was looking for. Sully was looking for
Right.
of like, you are, I don't know, maybe a pet, or a pet in a very sick, devious kind of way, or basically a partner, romantic partner. And of course she rejects this, and it kind of sets off some things that happen in the third act that we'll get into. But I just wanted to kind of touch on that. I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit more. What did you think about the maybe comparing this Eaters to like Addiction or Outcast? That there was queer culture in there. There was 80s America. You had the Bush Reagan thing that didn't really play a part of it, but throughout the movie, they also play different kind of clips of him speaking, Reagan speaking. They also kind of do like Midwest. They very much hit on the Midwest religiosity a little bit that underpins everything. They do kind of, that comes up again, old versus young. That's another one. And altogether, Eaters generally, my bigger point, us versus them, meaning we are this group of people that eat people, but how we do that or not depends upon a lot of different things that are very arbitrary at the end. Whereas there's some guiltness there of like where innocence is lost slowly but surely with Marin. Where she comes to understand, and there's another scene there that I want to get into too. I'll wrap this up here in a minute. They got three fates. You either lock yourself up, you hit the big delete button, so to speak, or you become a nomad. And I say they're not wanderers, they're nomads. Nomads is a more aggressive term to hobo or wanderer or vagabond. Nomads are kind of like a little bit more. There's a little bit of a purpose because they have to, because they kill. They kill. They're that. But anyway, sorry, I kind of was.
Yeah, are you saying that they're the ultimate end result of the consumer culture? No, but
maybe,
but no,
I don't know, but...
no, yeah, I like how you're looking at it in the perspective of society and what this implies. And
well, there's so many different ones to pick from, which I think works. It works in this movie's favor because they don't directly. But the thing is they go into it, but they don't go all the way into it. They go in. It's like they go in 2/3 or 3/4 of the way, and then they walk out. And then it's like, what? Hold on a second. What's going on here? Why did this happen? Why did But that maybe could be if they would have pulled it off. That's perfect because a good movie makes you think about. Good art makes you think about some aspect that hits you or whatever.
Right, and it's interesting that you said. It kind of reflects maybe gay culture because one the books that Marin is reading is Cabal by Clive Barker, and Clive Barker is a gay man, and he kind of dealt with and hid it for a good portion of his writing career.
Right.
But yeah, it's sort of his writing was very much are the monsters that we call monsters really monsters, and that sort of kind of parallels with gay culture and the homophobia and all of that. And I think his writing does a really good job of kind of paralleling that, and it's smart that they would use that for kind of bouncing off with her having the book and the movie.
Yeah. Just to be clear, queer culture, it definitely has a strong response in this movie, but it just doesn't quite. One more thing, little tidbit. On Timothée Chalamet, he has a tattoo that says Adam, Eve, and Steve. So they don't. I like that they just don't stick the landing because there's just for other factors here. But that's why it's just very interesting to me how you can, and this is how you do it. If you want people to think about other people, to have a problem looking at and seeing other things that are not them, per se. But there are all kinds of subcultures to everything, right? So like when you get into it, and I love that they showed that they really dive into it. And granted, it's a little bit fictional, eating people, but there are other kind of aspects that are very much. I do agree with the premise that I read. It does deal with marginalized kind of behavior, patterns of behavior, whatever you want to call it, all the way down to certain things like where you called into question, or not in the question, but you highlighted interracial. That's one thing that was still very much, maybe not I think it was pretty much accepted at some point. I think that America is getting more comfortable with certain things, but that's just me. I'm not even going to get into that because who knows? Because that's kind of the thing of this movie is that it's not. And I lost our main window, but that's okay. We'll continue on. But like, like you were saying, what scene did you want to get into? Sorry, like I want to like.
Oh well, okay, we're sort of getting near where I want to be, but just to shout out the acting. The acting's really good in this movie. I think the weakest person in the movie is probably Timothée, just because he didn't have that much to work with. He's sort of like the sounding board off of Myrnin. He does have these emotional arcs in the movie, but he's basically there as a sounding board off of Myrnin, and he's playing that sort of kind of lost redneck kid. I knew that kid in the 80s.
Right.
He wasn't hopefully he wasn't a cannibal, but yeah, he just there wasn't a lot of flesh on his bones as far as as far as character. So no diss to Timothée. He just didn't have a whole lot to work with, whereas all the other actors had so much to work with. Even though Chloë Sevigny, who plays Myrnin's mother, only has one line, that seems like huge. I mean, that's like a huge acting scene. And every scene that Sully's in, he's chewing up the scenery with his acting, and it's just fun to watch. Whereas Timothée, he's got the thankless role of just being the sympathetic boyfriend.
I think that the only other person who maybe could have done, and I agree with you, Timothy's fine. But Mark Rylance, the only other person that could have probably not. Well, I don't know. It could maybe Billy Bob Thornton, but like that's kind of hitting it really hard on the nose, maybe too hard. But despite that, I think Marin did a great job. She absolutely. It's just too bad that it just didn't quite stick the landing with Mr. Chalamet, so to speak.
Yeah. But it kind of shows that he's just not another pretty boy. He does know how to could portray himself in different ways, because he's he's not going to win any beauty magazine covers with the way he looked in this movie, which obviously. And then shout out to the film score. There's a lot of cool music in it, like Kiss and whatnot, but the score's done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who's done quite a few different soundtracks at this point. And Trent Reznor obviously is from Nine Inch Nails, but on his second half of his career, he's been doing a lot of scores that are really good. But yeah, the meat, the bones that I want to get into, the meat and bones of it is the third act. Now, my issue is, okay, they have three. They're kind of juggling three different story threads here. There's the Sully angle, which is sort of a kind of a love triangle where Sully is infatuated with Myrnin, right, and is very possessive of her. There's the story, the love story between Lee and Myrnin, and then there's the quest for her mother that Myrnin has. In they resolve the mother angle of it about 2/3 of the way into the movie,
right?
And I think that was a mistake, because the other two the love story and the love triangle aspects of the story are the weakest, in my opinion.
I agree.
The strongest is the mother story, because what
Marin's
happens
with her dad as well.
Mirren's,
Yeah, there's a balance point there where you come in with the dad and like catching up and whatnot, and then you move all the way through the very end. I agree with you. I think very very good points.
Yeah, I think if you because there's that overly emotional scene where she meets her mother for the first time, and that's so emotionally wrought, and most of it's done as a as a voiceover of the mother reading the letter that Miriam is reading. That's such an impactful scene, and you're kind of emotionally torn by the end of it, and it goes in a place that you didn't see coming.
Mm-mm.
And just totally, it kind of mind blowing. And then there's that scene afterwards where she has that really emotional kind of conversation with Lee, and that's actually where the movie should have ended, or at least been. So I think they should have moved that towards the end, because the whole thing with Lee and his father story, very predictable, very much you could kind of figure it out. Why are they leaving that for like a pivotal third act moment when in this, and we already know that they're in love with each other. The fact that they get back together after the momentary breakup from the mother seems like a kind of a long kind of blah sort of section, and then they end it with the love triangle, which is, you know, you've seen so many times in movies from the 90s of the love scorned person, and they don't really do anything new or exciting with that. It's just just your kind of basic love triangle ending that just ends up in blood and violence. Whereas if you ended it with the mother, that would have been so much a more emotional impact, and you could have said everything that you wanted to say. So you could have maybe done all the other stuff before then, but you really screwed the pooch when you had your most pivotal thing happen 2/3 of the way in, and then you just kind of meander and disappoint with the rest of the movie.
There's such a load on Marin's character and her relationship and her interactions with other characters.
It's her journey.
It very much like where when they try to. That's why I didn't buy the love aspect of it at all, because when you finally do get back to, again, Romeo and Juliet, okay, literally that's what you get. And if you don't nail that perfectly, you look silly, or it leaves you befuddled, and it's like you could see it coming a mile away. On top of it, already there being like, oh, and I did want to say about that, spoiler alert again, but we're already in the back half anyway. So if you stayed with this far, you'll forgive that we're going to get into deep details. Did you notice? Now, let me ask you this: did you catch that? What was it? Sully ate Lee's sister. Sully ate Kayla. So Kayla is this the closest that you'll get to a lamb, and there's many lambs here in the movie that just go to the slaughter for no reason whatsoever. There is no. It's just kind of like that is also intertwined. And there's not really enough. There's not enough time for the audience to process that unless you were really paying attention. I did not catch that the first time I watched it. The second time, and again, this goes back to what I was saying before. They're nomads where the road is home, and they all kind of carry their own totems or artifacts. For Marin, it's a couple books. For Lee, it's his victim's clothing. Maybe, I don't know. But Marin, it's kind of I don't know that any of these people have a conscience and that they actually like are remorseful for what they do. I don't buy that at all. But they have, and maybe this is like kind of the part of the aspect of the movie that didn't pay off for me. Whereas in Dexter, it was a famous serial killer kind of culture, kind of like you're a killer or you're not, you're a predator, essentially is what the recognition is. But with that, there's like rules and boundaries and a code that are more hard coded, that you buy into more. With this, it's very much more nomad. But you don't quite get that payoff with that, and that's a shame because they rushed it. That's part of probably like where they go so slow to build up this world to draw you in, and then they all of a sudden, it's just like they hit the gas at the wrong time for me, to be honest. And it doesn't it just you just miss too much. Like you're going too fast for you to have an impact, and then until you think about it later, maybe that's the point. I don't know, but that kind of like that mismatch of speed and tempo did not work for me. Like,
yeah,
it was still good. It's just not, the ending wasn't good. I think we're both on that same point. But anyway, I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, like you said, they try to cram so much in the last third act that it becomes a mishmash, and like I said, you lose the thought. I did notice that it was his sister that was he ate, but yeah, it's sort of like a throwaway line, and it should be like a what what happened.
But they don't explore it at all. It's just kind of like thrown away, which
right.
It's disappointing because like there's just so much. So much more that Timothee's character could have benefited from before. Like, I don't know how they would have done it. I'm not an expert, but that feels like a missed opportunity, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, to kind of harp on the movie references again, it starts off like Let the Right One In. It transitions into The Badlands, and it ends with Single White Female. It just kind of it's like, that's the wrong order, If you're going to lead up and kind of explode into something. But yeah, it's sort of like they had so many ideas and maybe again, I haven't read the book. I don't know how the book plays out, and if it invests more time into the characters in the third act is more of a payoff. But there's so many questions. The first two thirds of it, they were able to kind of explore the characters. They were able to explore themes and thoughts. And then the third one, they go, oh, well, what if we were happily ever after? And it's like, I had so many questions. It's like, okay, this sort of this nice little college couple, whatever, living in an apartment. What happened to them eating? How's that play out? Where does that fit in? And then the whole Sully thing comes in, and it's sort of like, okay, we're just going to end it in sort of like a kind of slasher thriller movie type of situation, and it kind of sullies
No, it does,
to kind of play on the pun. It sullied Sully's character because he was such an interesting character that he just becomes this one note character at the end. Although the whole that scene with her and him was pretty riveting as it played out, but it really didn't go anywhere. It didn't add anything to the story. And again, like I said, the emotional punch is the mother and them meeting it. If they could have switched things to where maybe Sully was like the spike at the the climax, and then the payoff was finding the mother and them kind of coming to terms with, oh, well, maybe we have to be alone. That would have been more of an interesting payoff, and it would have worked better.
I think they should have deleted the Kayla thing. And I think that if anything, if they were going to put Sully in, and they had to keep that, I would have said that shouldn't have been at the climax. It should have been, that should have been there. Like she meets him, you see him, he kind of explains what's going on a little bit. The audience is caught up. Then she sees this handsome fellow who seems to have some kind of like, I don't know, rightness about him, like for lack of, as messed up as that can be. Marin does have some kind of moral, somewhat, not really, but like, whereas like Lee is a more refined state of where Marin is at. Marin is more primitive in her process, like where Lee is kind of like, doesn't seem to be quite as well developed as Sully is. Like, so if they would have done it that way, then you could have like stayed in that outcast kind of, we're nomads, we have this kind of thing going on, and then you meet the rednecks. But the very first encounter should have been Marin and Lee dealing with Sully, in my opinion. And then you should have done the creep, and then you could have done something far more sinister with the rednecks. and then it would have made more sense that the rednecks would have catched up to them later, but like if you already had buried Sully in midway through the film, I think that would have worked better in my since I'm like quarterbacking here. I think that would have made much because then you would have seen them go through and bond with this with each other, and kind of like it would have been in their, because it is a journey, like you were saying. It's like a quest, it's like an adventure, and you would have definitely had more of a, I would have believed more that they were lovers and that they were like a couple or like whatever, had you seen that, and then you kind of slid back, and then maybe you could have brought the mom back. I don't know, something like that. But like that's why it kind of doesn't make sense for the Romeo. I didn't buy that. I didn't buy that at all. Like it just didn't make sense to me. Especially anyway. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that. But like I wish I kind of would. I think they could have kept a balance. But like I just wish. I don't know. Maybe we'll get lucky and there's a director's cut or something. I don't know. Maybe. I doubt it.
Nah.
Not in this day and age anyway. They don't really do that anymore. Anyway, but
they could, but I mean, it was a 2-hour and 10-minute movie.
It's already long. It was already very long as it was anyway.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think, like I said, it's the construction of the movie's fundamentally flawed, in my opinion. And the way he structured it, the way he structured it, I think is how he wanted it was his vision of the movie. And so yeah, it is what it is. My other comment is, if you're going to kind of be directly inspired by movies and play homage with a movie like this than in a bad movie, because if it's from point A to point B, a bad movie is a bad movie. Okay, right. They really didn't they didn't have anything to work with, whereas this movie they brought their A game for the first 2/3 of the movie and then just totally dropped the ball. It's like, oh man, you almost had it. You had me, and then you just kind of dropped it, and it's more of a frustration and oh man, you really could have done something. Another thing I'll point out, I didn't notice it, but in that the final scene with Sully, the hat he's wearing is a Nostromo hat from Alien. The crew hat.
Oh, I did not catch that. Yeah, that this is like, I will say this. I think that this is worth at least a 2 watch through. I think it's good for two viewings, because it does so much, and it could have been so. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it's easy to hate on a movie that sucks. It's obviously bad, or that just does tropes like it's very rudimentary.
It's a movie that doesn't know any better. It's like, but this movie knew what it could do, and then just kind of dropped the ball.
So much time with the world building that was just phenomenal, and like it just draws you in, and it makes you wonder so much about you just have so many other questions. Like, that's a good world building movie that so few movies nowadays can do. And do well. This one, I think this one does world building exceptionally well. But it also is very disappointing. It's I wouldn't even say it's a C. I'd probably even rate it lower than I'd say it's like a D. I'm not going to get a numerical rating because I don't think that means anything. But the first part of the movie was good B, A in spots, A plus. In certain, but like by the time you get to the thing, you're not Romeo and Juliet. That doesn't make sense. You're not like this creepy stalker kind of Sully vibe. That was already there anyway. Like, and I love that. I love that. Like, I love how like when she is in, they know how to build. The other thing I would have a problem with this is like I would have a very hard time saying that this would be a horror film. I don't buy that either. It's not a love film. I don't buy that it's horror. I think that it is a very weak psychological thriller at best. Just my opinion. But I don't know. But I'm very young, and the levels of horror. Did you buy that this was like that this is horror in your opinion? I mean, you have these horror mashups. I just didn't buy it. But what were your thoughts?
Well, to go back to I believe it was Douglas E. Winter. He wrote an article about how horror is really more of an emotion than a genre. Obviously, it's a genre as well, but you can have horror in a romance. You can have a horrific scene in a western, where it's mostly just a western, but you can have a horrific scene in it. So yeah, there are horrific moments in this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think but its strongest moments are a mix of emotional and like I said, the best scene obviously is the for me is the scene with the mother. But as a runner up, I really liked the second run in with Sully, where he shows up in the van, and they had that long discussion about a very long and on her part, very mature discussion about attraction and sometimes people just don't click. It's like sorry, but not sorry. Hey, and if they had ended that relationship there with him just blowing up and leaving, that's more powerful. I enjoyed that way more. And then the scene that they ended it with is kind of deflates the whole movie, kind of deflates all of the characters, and just ends it like a thriller movie, like a Single White Female, like I was saying earlier.
Yeah, this has very interestingly, I will say, I'll bring in the sci-fi genre, and this has nothing to do with sci-fi. Maybe not quite science fiction, more of like speculative fiction. I think that makes more sense because you are in this new world of like these people. I guess it could be sci-fi. Who am I kidding? Sci-fi could be anything. But you had this thing, and you remember the movie Looper with Bruce Willis, and that kind of like it closed the loop too quick. And you kind of already knew that with the movie Looper. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. It's kind of random on the fly here from the hip, but that movie also kind of like you kind of already knew what was happening when it happened. Like it was just kind of getting there. Okay, like we know the end state. It's just kind of like, okay, well, how does this play out? And I think Looper completed on that a little bit better than this movie did. But and I'm not saying there definitely are horror scenes, but I don't think this movie knows what it wants to be. Well,
it wants to be an art film, which for the first two-thirds of it, it is, but then it becomes kind of a trashy thriller at the end, which is to its discredit.
I just don't even get. At least with the romance novel or like a throwaway kind of like whatever that kind of thing, you do get completion. But for me, the disappointing part is that it's never completed that thought coherently. Like I don't buy that it's horror. I don't buy that it's a love story. I don't buy any of those things, but it definitely had its moments. And I don't know. I think it tried to do too much, and it kind of stumbled over its own toes. Its shoes weren't quite tied all that well. I think. No, go ahead.
Well, I think it's sort of if you're going to take a movie past its natural stopping point, which would have been the mother scene, there are ways to do it and make it interesting. One of the writers I really love is Adam Novell, who we saw a movie adaptation of one of his books, The Ritual. And the thing with The Ritual is that the movie kind of stops where the book would have naturally stopped, but Adam kind of takes a lot of his books, almost all the books I've read of his, he kind of brings it to what would have been the stopping point normally for a lot of writers, but then he adds on this whole other third act that kind of opens up the world and kind of revolutionizes it and just takes it in a whole different, wonderful way.
Sure.
And if you're going to add that third act and just do something crazy with it, you got to pull out all the stops. They didn't. They pulled out the stops right before it, and just kind of rode on flat tires to the end, the finish
Yeah.
line. So yeah, that's my my take on it.
I like that analogy. It's like you start the movie with like you're rolling down the highway, and then and actually this
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
good
marries
for
up.
road movie.
Well, and it marries up well with what my criticism was, which is like you're rolling down the highway, and you're it's taking some time to get up to speed. But by the time you get up to speed, you're already going way too fast, and then you're kind of like, what the what are we doing? You know, like it kind of leaves you at a head scratching moment. I would say, despite all, I mean, I think this is probably the film that we've been a little bit more critical on, and I love it.
Yep.
But I would say that I still think it is worth watching. I absolutely think it's worth watching. I not only once but twice. But either you do that or you read the book and then watch it, and then I think you're going to get a maximum value out of it. Probably, if we were a little bit more whatever in the know, well, we probably would have done that. But the book, I have no clue. But obviously, it was good enough. I don't know. Maybe the book gets you there in a better way than trying to like achieve. You know, you're just trying to reach more for that thing, and it just didn't quite materialize with the movie. But it's still worth seeing because you if you haven't heard or watched or seen it, and you go into it, I do agree with you. This movie is best put in front of you with no knowledge whatsoever, period, and then you kind of go from there. You know, but this would probably be like a pretty solid Netflix hit, I guess. If anything, then I would have never gone to see this in the theater anyway. But like, I would have had to been like you would have had to been a Timothée Chalamet fan or a Rylance or or the director, or some other kind of in that you would have known about this anyway, or you were looking for to go see. And you probably would not be disappointed, or maybe, and I don't know, but I don't know. I think we covered most of what I was saying.
Yeah, the only other thing I was I was going to point out, I was looking at some of the trivia on it, and I didn't realize that MGM was bought by Amazon, and this was the first MGM movie that they made after after Amazon had bought them. So that's one of the reasons why this is on Amazon, and you can see it on Amazon Prime. But yeah, it's yeah, I like I said, I'm kind of curious if anyone's out there that's watched this and made it this far who have read the book or have a different take on the movie. Maybe we're dummies and didn't really see with the importance of that third act. Let us know in our comments. Let us know. Let's get a conversation going. And I like whenever there's a book. I want a T-shirt, and maybe if we get big enough to start doing T-shirts, I want a T-shirt that says "the book was better." The book was better. Because how many times have you heard that? And then,
yeah, I could see that. I could see that. And books have a different, they have a different thing. But yeah, I think we covered everything that I wanted to say. I'm just reviewing my notes. It does play with concepts of time a little bit, not too much, but time definitely is part of it, for sure.
shout out to Sully's nasty hair rope. That was oh man, that was something else.
Yeah, and I don't think I completed a thought, but like it seems like I kind of flirted with it quite a bit, but like it seems like that's a way of having home, so to speak. You see Sully's kind of like his knapsack kind of on the floor, askew, and you see, kind of Louis Lamar kind of things like a good bar. You see like that. But you also see that the precious, you see the hair.
Well, it was his hair. World, his world of the things he's interested in.
Right,
yeah.
That was his home. That's
his
home.
Kind of
that's
slice
his world.
Of life. Yeah.
Right. No, that and then you see you don't really see it too much. I'm sure we missed Marin's. I'm sure we called out a few. I'm sure Lee has some too. But it's just very interesting how it kind of played out. It was just very interesting. I did see a they did a very I will just saying positive. They did a very, very good job with the 80s in ways that other movies like totally don't care about. So
Yeah.
it's it does a very good job to set you up. Maybe you like the ending. Let us know, like Thomas was saying. But we do. I think we're coming up here on the caboose. And I think we're. Do you have anything else to say or add? Do you want to give it a rating, or do you want to give it a recommendation, or would you recommend this to somebody to watch? Maybe if they're not quite. I don't. What do you think?
I probably tell them to spend that 2 hours and watch a better movie. But no, yeah, generous would probably be a 6, just because of everything that
It's so funny you
became
say
before.
that.
But
I'd accept that.
I'm kind of right between 5 and 6, maybe a 5.5.
It for sure is not a 7. It's not an 8. It's not a 9. It's not a 10. None of those. But 6, a good day. Maybe you're in the mood.
If
it hits the spot. Maybe.
I will say this: if you have 2 hours that that you could that you're not going to miss anytime. It does have some good acting in it. There's really great character actors.
Yep.
If you are really a big fan of Timothée and want to see him in something, this isn't a bad movie to watch him in, to see his acting range. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, if you were kind of interested in this movie, I would say watch a better movie instead. Watch Badlands. Watch Let the Right One In. The Let the Right One In takes the whole thing with, like, it focuses on vampires, but what would it be like to be a vampire in real life kind of scenario, as well as Near Dark is another take on the vampire as a real thing kind of vibe. But yeah, so yeah, I'd say watch a better movie. And I think those all three of those movies are shorter movies.
Yeah,
get the job done at a better space and time.
Yeah, I think this one it didn't. I don't think it's terrible. I still think it's a good time for a movie as movies go, because what I'm talking about is comparing it to every other schlock, glop that's out there. It is kind of takes it. I will say I think Spiderhead that we reviewed last year around this time, December, I think is superior, and I think you'd have a fun time. Although people didn't like that one.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yep. Yeah. You never know.
We loved it. So I'd say go watch that before you watch this, if you really want something that's gonna get the juices. Like, if you're gonna be surprised, that would be my opinion. But yeah, this one it was. I'm glad I watched it. I will say that. But I will say that you're spot on 6, and that's not that. But that goes into a whole other thing. But with that being said, I've been Mike.
And I'm Tom, and we are the first, the last, the Nerdom, celebrating our year 2. We're going to be doing better and better things. Mike's been refining our technical side as far as our podcast and all the bells and whistles during the podcast, and I've been working on the thumbnails. We're not sitting on our laurels. We're improving things in little ways. So hopefully you take notice of that and stick around and let us know what you think.
Absolutely. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Say, why don't you go downstairs and get a little popsicle for you? Oh, that'd be great. This has been a first, the last, the Nerdom production with Mike and Tom, or Tom and Mike. Out.